Hello and welcome to Filmy Ladies. This is our second episode in our series, Watching the Rainbow. And if you're watching us on YouTube, you'll see that we have chosen another not very colorful color. It is gray. And let us just remember that without gray clouds that bring rain, there is no rainbow.
Yes.
So do not be sad about gray. Gray is a lovely, useful part of what we see. Uh, this was an interesting one. I did not go visually gray. Did you go visually gray?
I went visually as well as subject matter gray. So
Okay.
both grays, yeah.
And I also went subject matter gray because I think that's a quite straightforward choice to make. Part of me was
Yes.
thinking like, oh, I'm sure I've seen many black and white movies where the sort of middle tones are really glorious and someone does something really amazing with that. But really, when I started thinking about gray, I wanted to watch a gray character. And in my mind, nobody does a gray character well. It's our favorite Shah Rukh Khan. So I'm going to be talking about Raees,
Yay.
which I have not rewatched in a while and really love. And Pitu is going to be talking about Masaan,
Yes.
which is
So cheerful.
a much beloved film. I
Yes.
feel like so. Um, I've actually not seen Masaan. I
Beth, you must
know,
watch it.
I know. I'm
It's so
sorry.
good.
I know. I was under the impression it was depressing, so I've never watched
It's
it.
not depressing. It's very real, but I actually don't consider it a
Okay.
depressing movie. And I've watched it multiple times as one of my
Mm.
favorite films, and it always brings a smile to my face. And Vicky
Oh,
Kaushal in this movie is just
well,
he's just baby. He's so
yeah.
cute and he's darling in this movie.
So tell me what is Masaan and why should I watch it?
So Masaan has a very, very cheerful and happy title because Masaan is the colloquial version of the Hindi or Sanskrit word, which is shamshan or smashan, which means crematorium. So that is where bodies are cremated after the
Yeah.
person dies. And so Masaan is just the colloquial version of that. So it literally means the crematorium. Um,
That is
and
so
this
cool.
movie,
Actually, like that's fascinating. I can't tell you
isn't it?
how many Indian movies I watch where I have no idea what the title means going in.
Yeah.
Uh, and I didn't, that was one I did not know. And see, now already I'm like, maybe I will watch this movie.
You should. It's so amazing. So I was posting pictures of making little collages of
Mhm.
screenshots from the movie because it's so darling. And I kept posting them on Instagram. And my friends who have never seen Masan were messaging me and they were like, what does Masan mean? And first I told them why they should watch it because Vicky is amazing and Richa Chadda is amazing. And then they were like, but what does Masan mean? And I was like, so actually it means crematorium, but let's not discuss that. Because I wanted them to watch the movie, right?
Yeah.
So this movie is set in Banaras slash Varanasi slash Kashi, whatever you call it, and it's a lot of it centers around the ghats, which is where bodies are cremated. And Vicky Kaushal's character Deepak belongs to a family where their family trade is literally working on the ghats
Mm.
and gathering the firewood and burning the bodies and basically actually doing the funeral rites. So it's kind of like being an undertaker or something. And then it's kind of like his love story. And then there's also a parallel story happening at the same time in Banaras, which is Richa Chadda's story. And it's about this situation that she's in with a young man, which I don't want to divulge any spoilers, but there's a situation that she's in, not a very good situation, and a lot of like great things happening, quite a lot of societal judgment, some amount of police brutality, things like that that are happening. And then towards the end of the film, these two distinctly different stories kind of converge. And,
Mm.
Vicky Kaushal as well as Risha Chadda's paths cross.
Mm.
And it's just part of the reason I love this movie so much is because, first of all, I love Benares. It is one
Mm.
of my favorite Indian cities. The first time
Yeah.
and I've been multiple times, like at least 4 times, because my family has gone there. I mean, I've gone with my family multiple times for like pilgrimage
Mm.
reasons. And it is so raw. It is so authentic. It is such a real city. And every person you meet in Benares is so authentic. Like
Mm.
they're so authentically themselves. And I love the old parts of the city. I love Banaras Hindu University. The campus is gorgeous. I find their breakfasts astoundingly like very shocking because they eat jalebi samosa for breakfast. Yes. Can you imagine?
That's
Like you're
using their
having
noodle.
you're having chai, and then they're like, here's a deep fried samosa and here's a jalebi, and I'm like, wait, what? This is
Thank
breakfast. We don't
you.
we don't have that for breakfast. But and then the ghats are
Yeah.
so amazing, and Banaras is so real. Like when you're a little kid and you go to Banaras for the first time, you see these sadhus and they have like pythons and they have ash all over them and they're muttering to themselves. There's the actual like groups of sadhus everywhere,
Hmm.
and then you have normal people on their mopeds and women doing grocery shopping and everything. They're completely oblivious to them. And then on the ghats, like when you do like a little boat ride on the Ganga and stuff, it's astoundingly beautiful, especially
Hmm.
at sunset, at dusk, when they do the
Hmm.
Maha Aartis. All the
Oh, those are
temples
so
light up.
beautiful. Yeah.
It's so stunning, all the chanting and everything. And usually when you're on the boat, they'll stop the boat for a second out of respect, and you're just watching, and it really it you have shivers down your spine because you're like,
I love
wow.
I don't know the name, I'm sorry, the big brass pyramid of
Yes,
lights that they're waving
it's
around. So
it's
beautiful.
such a magical city.
Yeah.
And it's also so, I one thing I really like about Banaras, which I've heard a lot of people tell American tourists in particular to like brace themselves, because Banaras is not for the faint of heart, right?
Yeah.
Because so much of Banaras is tied in to Hindu traditions, and
Hmm.
specifically, it's where you go after you die,
Hmm.
right? Like the
Hmm.
pilgrimages that we did were all after we had family members who passed. Like
Hmm.
my grandfather died, then my other grandma died, then we went, it's stuff like that. So it's where you're supposed to go. And
Yeah.
so death is really woven into the fabric of the city. And they have such a healthy attitude towards death, honestly. They're not coddled. They don't act like death is something scary to talk about. It's all in the open. It's like, yep, you die, and then everyone becomes ash. And this is where you come after you're dead. And hopefully you're going to have a good afterlife. And maybe you won't. We don't really know. But it's just, it's a very pragmatic city. At the same
Mm.
time, it's so spiritual. Ugh, I could talk about Banaras all day long. I love it so much. So Masaan is so Banarsi,
Mm.
and the lives of the people on the ghats. And Vicky Kaushal's character is so interesting because he's a student studying engineering, and he clearly doesn't want to work on the ghats anymore, right? But that's his family business. That's what they've always done. There's also a lot of talk about the caste system, not in
Oh
like a
yeah.
heavy-handed way, but the fact that the people who do work on the ghats, not the priests, but the people who are actually burning the bodies, they're obviously lower caste people.
Hmm.
And it's like, what is your status in society? You're It's so ironic that it's like when a person dies, even if they're like a Brahmin or whatever, the person who's burning you, like the person who has your body in their hands in your last, like, your last entityfication
Mm.
on earth, is literally a lower caste person. So like, what does caste even mean at that point? So there's all these interesting questions it brings up. And then Pankaj Tripathi has a little role in it, and you can see back in 2015, which is when Masan was made,
Mm.
he had that whole like intellectual comedic wise uncle thing going on. Like this is probably the earliest movie I've seen of his where he has that going on. And like now that shtick I'm a little bit tired of, but back then I think it was
Hmm.
different and cool. And then Richa Chadha's character in this movie is also amazing. She is so resilient, and she does not take shit from anybody. And I
Mm.
love how subtle she is. She's so nuanced, such a good actress. And Vicky Kaushal is just baby. He's raw, he's real. This is just such a good movie. And there's a song in it. It's called रेल सी तू रेल सी गुजरती है मैं पुल की तरह कप कपाता हूँ, I think. Like she blazes by me like a railway train, like a train,
Mm.
and I tremble like at the platform. I tremble like the bridge. And it's just very evocative. The cinematography is beautiful. There's a lot of literal shades of gray in this film because there's the waters of the Ganga, there's the morning shots where there's a lot of fog and smog, there's the literal gray color of the ashes. There's a lot of dinginess in
Mm.
the places that they live in. Like when you look at Vicky
Hmm.
Kaushal's house, when you look at Rishi Chadda's house, these are not like well lit palatial mansions, right? These are very tiny little dwellings. So there's a lot of gray. There's the grayness of the sky.
Mm.
And yet, despite the depth in it and despite the grayness in it, it's actually a very life fortifying, substantial movie. It's very like, go forth and make your life what you can.
Mm.
Really amazing. And there's a quote I want to say that is from Vicky Kaushal. So he says, for days before we started filming Masaan, I'd sit here at the Manikarnika Ghat Banaras for hours at a stretch, quietly watching bodies getting burnt. Dark, fair, beautiful, ugly, rich, poor, fat, thin, all of them turning into the same color of ash, leaving behind just their deeds, teaching me the most important lesson of my life.
Mm.
That's pretty cool. Like, yeah, you could be a king or you could be a pauper. It does not matter because guess what? Now you're just ash. It's just gray
Yeah.
and you're gone, you know?
Yeah.
Um, really, really good movie. And for a movie with such a um, dark theme and such an incredibly dark title, it's actually I wouldn't quite say it's a motivating kind of a movie, but it's
Mm.
definitely a movie that makes you appreciate where you are and who you are. And I personally find it quite inspiring. It's
Mm.
really beautifully made.
Mm.
So yeah, that's why I chose Masan for Gray.
Mm.
Did you avoid Masan because you thought it was just going to be very like sad?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not that sad. I
Okay.
wouldn't lie to you. Yeah.
Okay.
And it's the other thing about it is it's only 1 hour and 49 minutes, which
Yeah.
by Hindi movie standards is
Yeah.
really short.
Brief. Yeah.
And it's perfect. I
Hmm.
don't think it should have been a minute longer. The story is perfectly told. I was not left wanting anything more, and it's great. It's like 1 hour 49 minutes was perfect. I thought the editing was really crisp and the direction is really good. It's by Neeraj Ghevan. It's his
Hmm.
debut film actually. He's
Wow.
done a great job with it.
And Varun Grover, of course, wrote it, and we are
He
fans of
wrote the
Varun Grover.
screenplay.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Why
Mm.
did you pick Race?
Well, it it wasn't a matter of picking, honestly. Like as soon as I started thinking about gray, this just went ping as what I wanted to do. And as you were talking, I was thinking about other things that gray can mean.
Hmm.
Like it would have been interesting to pick a movie about aging. It would
Right.
have been interesting to pick a movie maybe about um the respite of shade in the summer, right? Like
Right.
gray is a dampening effect often, right? Like
Yes.
it makes something less so. And often we think of that as a sad thing, like, oh, the sky is gray, but like we have to have clouds to have rain to have water to survive. Like gray is
Right.
great, or we have to have shade in the summertime, or
Yeah.
we were talking in our snow episode about watch out for the snow that's turned gray and yucky, but that means
Yeah.
things are moving and changing. Like
Right.
gray actually fills all these really uh important roles in nature. And of course, there's a lot of stone that's gray and it can be really
Yes.
beautiful. So that was another thing I was thinking about is I could have picked something with a big stone castle in it or
Oh,
something.
yeah. I also feel like Gray's association with being depressing or sad is
Yeah.
cultural. Like, I feel
Yeah,
like
I'm
that's more
sure.
of a
I'm sure.
Western
Okay.
outlook
Yeah.
because in India, the monsoons are so looked forward to, right?
Yeah,
And the harbinger of the
true.
monsoon is the gray clouds.
So
There's,
that was kind of
yeah.
the only other movie that occurred to me was Munzil because it has the amazing
Hmm.
rain song in it, of
Yes.
course. And I like that movie a lot, but I love the Bengali original, which is a little
Hmm.
bit shorter, and they're scene for scene extremely similar. But
Hmm.
that's a lovely, and the Bengali is black and white, so I could have, done gray there. But yes, I did
Right.
briefly think about rain. And
Yeah.
no better cinema tradition than an Indian cinema tradition to show you
Right.
the beauty of rain, honestly. Like
Yes.
rain is
So beautiful.
so beautifully shot and so beloved.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, I went for morally gray, and
Hmm.
I don't know why exactly, because I'm certainly not sort of emotionally, intellectually in the state for ethically gray right now as we enter the darkest timeline again. But um, I I sure do love Raees. I sure do love this
Yeah.
movie. I saw it twice in the cinema because I went once with a friend and her boyfriend, and they both did not like it at all. And I was kind of like, And then I thought a couple days later, I was like, you know what? I want to go see that again. Like I want to think through this some more. So I went again and then I really liked it. And I believe I've watched it online or whatever since at least one time. But
Okay.
I really love this movie. And it's a little, there are parts of it that are drawn broadly, but not
Mhm.
out of line with what you tend to see a hero do or a villain do, right? Or even an anti-hero. But I think that Shah Rukh plays this character so well. I think it's a really interestingly written character. I think you know, his devotion to business at the same time as to his community is really,
Mhm.
I find that pretty compelling actually. And like, what do you do with a person who is, I think it's safe to say, psychotically greedy, but also cares deeply about a lot of the people around him, even if he doesn't really know them. But he does
Right.
actually know a lot of these people, right? Like he stays where he's from, he grows where he's
Mhm.
planted, like that kind of thing, right? And I just think it's a really interesting character, but you can't say he's a good person.
Right.
He's decidedly not a good person. He's murdering people pretty much from the get-go as an
Yeah.
adult. And I mean, doesn't he murder somebody with a leg of meat?
I don't
He certainly
remember.
beats the pulp out of them with a leg of goat or
Oh
lamb or
gosh.
whatever it is. Like they go to
Okay.
he goes to sell goats in the markets in Mumbai for Eid. Um, and someone isn't going to let him do it. And he starts this humongous brawl and he is unhinged, right? This guy
Right.
is extremely violent, extremely violent. I also find the thing about how they use his glasses and not to be really
Mm.
interesting as someone who's had glasses from the same age as Raees and like I can't function without, you know, lenses. What he can see and not see is kind of an interesting metaphor. And I think in some other hands I would have found that too heavy-handed, but I really like it because they don't talk about it so much as they just you see him fiddling with his glasses. In one scene, he kills somebody with his glasses, which are sharpened at the end of the temple, right? Like
Mhm.
he's it's fascinating.
He will use anything as a weapon, won't he?
He will. He will. And I love in Layla Olela when he pulls the dagger from Sunny Leone's hair and like,
Right.
because in what is it um which movie is it where he has somebody has a gun in her hair? It's
Oh gosh, I don't
it's
know.
oh no, why am I blanking? I'm so sorry, all the Shah Rukh fans. Why can I not think of this movie that
Oh, it's a
everybody
Shah Rukh
loves?
fan. I mean, it's a
Yeah,
Shah Rukh movie.
there's a
Okay.
song where there's a big Batman logo in the background.
Is
This
this
is so
Badsha?
yes, thank you.
Okay.
All I could think of was Buzzygar, and I knew that wasn't right. I was like, "Buh, thank you."
Right.
In Bloodshot, I'm pretty sure that someone's got a
Okay.
gun either under their hat or in their wig. I was like,
As one does.
that's brilliant, is what that is.
Right.
Um, so I enjoy Sunny Leone. I know we don't really talk
Right.
about her particular, like nobody really talks about her too much as
Yeah.
far as I know, but I thought she did a great job in that song, and I've liked some of her movies, or at least one of her movies. So this is sometimes I would say this is kind of a hard movie to sit with, but it's not because I didn't, like it feels very self-contained and I don't walk out of here feeling like, oh, what a heavy message that I must interpret and apply to my everyday life or anything. Like it's a contained story of this one person and the police officer Nawazuddin Siddiqui is really
He's so
good
good.
in this film. I was kind of skimming through some of the reviews and a lot of people say that he really walks away with this show. I think they both do an amazing job and I like them together a lot.
Hmm.
um uh I would love to see Shah Rukh with more people like that. um
Yeah.
but and he ends the movie by saying a voiceover by saying, I'm still not sure if I did the right thing by murdering, I don't know, murdering, assassinating. What do you call it when a police officer does it, right? Because
Right.
it's very staged, it's very organized. This is not a
Right.
bullet in an encounter. His life is not under threat,
Right.
um, but also and I should say, I feel like maybe some of my kind of, I can just watch this and leave it where it is a privilege because I have not experienced the Gujarat riots as a person living in
Hmm.
Gujarat, right? So there's obviously the way they bring in the political stuff I think is really interesting.
Hmm.
And I don't watch Gujarati movies, but I don't feel like I've
Right.
seen this depicted a ton in Hindi films, and it's it's really interesting. And the whole thing about the kind of underlying theme in this movie of what a waste. Prohibition and trying to enforce
Right.
prohibition is an absolutely insane waste of resources.
Right.
Um, and they just kind of have that there, I think, for you to pick up on because, this police officer spent his entire career going after these criminals who are doing something that the public clearly wants.
Right.
Like, why? I was not alive in the United States during our prohibition, but like, doesn't
Mhm.
work. It
Yeah.
doesn't like why? And I think the cat and mouse, which is not even really cat and mouse. Race is not a mouse.
Right.
It's cat and cat. But the footage of the police steamrolling over the bulldozing over the bottles is really funny.
Mm.
The way that Raees and his crew get around the police is fun. Like when they decide, oh, the highways are blocked, fine, we'll use the rivers and the water. Like
Right.
it's you want him to triumph even though he's doing something that's technically bad, but it's not bad enough that like if he were just a smuggler and not a murderer, I wouldn't care.
Mm.
Right. Like
Right.
I'm like, he's an interesting hero. But the fact that he is so violent and so, I think, single-mindedly, well, he's double-mindedly focused, but he does put so much focus into his business that he does lose track of some other things, clearly. And he suffers for it in the end, and he knows it. Right.
Right.
And his mother's advice is businesses above all else, unless it hurts somebody. And a lot of people were hurt.
Right.
And at that point, I think he knows it's over.
So, do you think, okay, I feel like no one else could have done this role except for Shah Rukh because that character is truly so sociopathic. Like he's such a
He really
bad a
is.
person, all caps,
Yeah.
because he's not someone like I mean, most people, including myself, I feel are okay with the gray characters that Shah Rukh plays, where he's taking revenge on someone, right?
Right.
Like if you look at a
Right.
movie like Bazigar, except
Yeah.
for the part where he kills Shilpa Shetty, which is so not warranted.
Not warranted.
Please don't do that. But like the fact that he wants revenge against Dalit Tahil, or all of those films that Amitabh did in the 70s, where he's
Yeah.
the angry young man and he's taking revenge.
Which they
All
beautifully
almost
reference in this movie. I'd forgotten they're at
right.
the drive-in, and they boy they yeah.
Yeah, but in those sort of movies, that's like the audience is really sympathizing with that character because they're like, well, all these bad things were done to him. What do you guys expect
Hmm.
him to do? Just like walk away? Of course not. And it's cathartic too, right? For the audience to see this person taking revenge, and like it's kind of like a David versus Goliath fight, and it
Yeah.
feels good.
Yeah.
But this movie, he's not a person who's just out taking revenge.
No.
It's really hard to justify his horribleness.
Yeah.
And the closest counterpart I can think is because I love the Godfather series so much, the three movies, and then I
Yeah.
also really love The Sopranos so much. That is the closest thing I
Yeah.
can think of,
That's
right?
who this guy
Very
is,
sociopathic.
basically. Yeah.
Right. The
And
Corleones, the Sopranos, and Raees. They're
you kind of
all
swap out family for community a little bit,
right,
but yeah.
like
Oh yeah.
larger community, and
Yeah.
it's all the same. But I feel like in movies like this, so much hinges on the inherent star power and likability of that actor, right?
That's
Because
interesting.
like in the Godfather, for example, it's the likability of Al Pacino, it's the likability of Robert De Niro. In the
Mm,
Sopranos movies, that's the likability of James Gandolfini. You have to pick someone who has that charisma where the audience is being taken along with them. There is some amount of not quite pretty privilege,
a
but
little bit.
definitely that charm and
Mm.
that swagger and the stylishness and all of that. It is meant to bamboozle the audience some.
So here are people who came to mind as you were talking about that.
Mm,
If we were to make this movie now, by which I mean, okay, so this movie had a theatrical release, obviously.
yes.
If you could make this movie for the streaming market,
Mhm.
and then you could be a little more open with your casting, right? You could
Right.
choose someone who does not have this insane star power.
Yeah.
Honestly, Nawaz as the lead of this would be great.
Yeah.
He would have been great. Now, could you put a movie on his shoulders in 2017? Mm, maybe, but it's a little trickier,
Ooh.
right? Um,
You know who would be great? Irfan. The
Irfan
late,
would have
great
been great.
Irfan Khan.
Absolutely. He's on my list.
Yes.
I think because I think he is I don't know what to call this character. So like he lives in a city, but it's a small city.
Hmm.
He's not a big city mafia boss like the guy he takes on and eventually kills. But and then leaves again. Like he doesn't want to take over that guy's empire. He just
Right.
wants his shipping and his money.
Yeah.
Um so
Whack him
he's
and move on.
he's a little bit I want to say rustic, but he's not quite major league. He's minor
Right.
league in a way. He's huge where
Yeah.
he is, but where he is a little remote and, not the big
Hmm.
leagues. Um, so part of me was like, I wonder if Saif Ali Khan could have done it.
I think
You'd
so.
have to de-glam him in a way that is interesting to think about, but I feel like he's got the right kind of um ethical gray, right, to do
Yeah.
this role. I honestly think this might be crazy. Again, this would have to be a streaming thing and not a feature film, but in the theaters. But like, I think Abhishek Bachchan could maybe do this. I would love to see him enter
No.
his gangster era.
Really? I
Yeah, you
just
don't
don't
think
think
so?
Abhishek is that good.
Yeah.
I don't think he's talented enough.
Mm.
Ranbir Kapoor though. I think he
Ranbir
could
could
do
do
it.
this. Yeah, you're right. He could do this.
Ranbir Singh could do it too. You know who might be interesting?
He's too like shiny, flashy, I think. Because this guy is like he dresses like everybody else, right? He dresses like
Right.
all the other guys around him. Um, he lives in a house that's like all the other houses on the street. Like he's not flash and
Right.
fancy. And I feel like Ranveer Singh, no, maybe he could do it, but I do associate him with
Right.
flash.
With the Balenciaga and everything, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Although, I mean, Ranveer in Gully Boy, although,
Yeah.
yes, his stage persona and everything is very
Yeah,
flashy
that's
just
true.
by nature of what, like,
Yeah.
he's a
He's
showman,
also not
right?
quite
But,
old enough. And I don't know how old Raees
right.
is supposed to be all the time. Like
I
I'm like
can't
whatever,
tell.
it doesn't matter. But like I think you do need to be able to project middle age by the end
Yeah.
of this story. Like he's very well established. He's worked hard. He's established, but
Hmm.
I don't know who else. But yeah, I mean, Irfan would have been amazing, obviously.
Irfan would have just killed it. But I wonder, what do you think about Shahid Kapoor? He's one of those people that I think
Maybe.
maybe he could do it. I'm not sure. You know what could be great? What if Raees was a woman and it was Tabu?
Sure.
Right?
Amazing.
Like she's
Yes.
not Raees, her name is Razia. Let's change her name and it's Tabu. Can you
Yeah,
imagine?
she'd be really
Tabu is a
good.
mob boss. She would completely kill it and she would look so good the whole time.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
she would be amazing too.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I do think Raees works so much for me because it's Shah Rukh.
Oh, sure.
Because
And I'm not sure I would have watched it without him in it, right? Or someone else I really like. Like the story alone, now that I've seen the movie multiple times, I do find the story very engaging and compelling. But
mm,
it just on paper, without having seen it, I'm not sure I would have, which is
right.
too bad. And that says something about me, and maybe I need to look harder at certain things. But um, I just think yeah, like you were saying, this is not the gray that Shah Rukh usually does. It's a little different. Um,
This is a way darker, way
mhm.
edgier Shah Rukh.
And
And it's
the
not an unhinged Shah Rukh in the sense that that's like an unhinged Shah Rukh,
right.
right? Anjam is an unhinged Shah Rukh. Wow, Shah Rukh Khan is the actor I associate with the color gray,
Yeah.
right? Like from the get-go. I mean,
Yeah.
it used to be Amitabh, I guess, but
Yeah.
I didn't grow up with Amitabh's movies. So for
Yeah.
me,
And
Shah
this
Rukh Khan is
obviously, if
gray.
this had been in the 70s and 80s, Amitabh would have nailed this. It would have
Yes.
been um maybe someone like Anil Kapoor would have been really good in
Yeah.
this too. Like, but so there's actually quite a few people who could do this, I think, but he is the one who
Yeah.
chose to do it. And again, as I've said, I don't really pay attention to interviews and stuff, so I don't know what he has said about why he chose to do this film, but I
Didn't
think
he produce it or no?
I don't remember. I just think it's I think it's really compelling. Let's see. Yes.
I'm so curious because I feel like he
Gory
produced
is
it.
listed as a producer.
Right. So it's not just that someone brought him a script and said,
Yeah.
"Do you want to do this movie
Yeah.
with us?" It's like
Yeah.
being a producer is a choice,
Yeah. Put
right? So
this.
he probably sought this or
Yeah.
said, "Oh, I like this so much. Do you have a producer attached? If not, I want to do
Yeah.
it."
And what I remembered about the reception of this film is that it was a little bit lukewarm, but it was the sixth
Hmm.
highest grosser of the year or
Yeah.
something like that. So it did a lot better than I was remembering it. And
Well,
especially, before 2023 when Shah Rukh had that amazing year of films, and we were all like, okay, is this going to be the year? He hasn't had a hit in so long. Raees must have been a hit then,
I
right?
think
But
Race was a hit. It just wasn't like a huge blockbuster or
beloved,
anything. I, of course, saw it in the theater because I watch all Shah Rukh Khan
right?
films in the theater, with the notable exception of Zero and Jab Harry Met Sejal. Those movies broke my streak. But I did
Mm.
see Race in the theater, and I enjoy people enjoying it. I mean, I remember people enjoying it. I also really liked the music of Race.
Yeah,
I love him and Mahira in that Garba song.
yeah,
They are so good in it. And I'm so happy that even though this is like a gangster flick, I'm glad that he has some dances in it, because I need Shah
yeah,
Rukh to be dancing.
yeah.
He's also so good in Zalimat. Like, they have hella chemistry in
They
that
do.
song. He looks really good with like his turban and whatever Arabian avatar he has in the sands. It's clearly very fantastical, that Zanama
Hmm.
song, but like he looks really good in it. And of course, the eyeliner, can't argue with that. That looks really
Very,
good too.
very many scenes of the eyeliner.
Yes,
Yeah,
I love it.
yeah.
No one does eyeliner like Shah Rukh Khan does on eyeliner.
There's one tiny little detail about this film that I want to mention simply because it cracked me up when I saw it originally, and I've continued to find it amusing. So there's Raees gets a bunch of phones installed so they can do their home
Okay.
delivery of alcohol more easily. One of his phones is a little red race car.
Okay.
He picks up the car. And I was like, you've been murdering people and you have a little, like, are you six? And he is six, right? Like this little boy who we meet in the beginning of the film is old beyond his years initially, but
Mm,
then is I think this indicates a little bit of stuntedness or something, right? Like
right.
this person has not fully coalesced into an actual truly functional adult. And he
Right.
hasn't. He hasn't. Um,
No, race is definitely a very good candidate for therapy, I would say.
oh yeah. 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 I
Do you know
also
there's a lot of mobsters actually do have therapists and psychiatrists that they go to, and of course because of HIPAA laws and stuff like
right.
that, it's all confidential. But also a lot of mobsters, like at least the Italian ones like Al Capone and stuff like that, they were like actual like church going Catholics, and so they would make confessions as well. Can you imagine
Going to
either
church
being a
means
priest
nothing.
or a therapist
I mean, you're already
to them?
bound by your professional things not to talk, but like get extra not talk if you they could kill you
Yeah.
instantly. Um, I also love the sort of supporting cast in this movie. I think
Mm,
everyone is really good, especially let me get his name correct. Oh my God, where's the cast list? Ah. Oh, Mohammed Zishan Ayub, who plays his friend,
okay.
who that's his business partner that he's always
Mm,
talking to, the one who gives him like the safety, who calls out the safe word and or the not safe word and stuff like that. I think
mm,
Shiba Chada is good and her little role as his mother. I love Atul Kulkarni. I think he's great
mhm.
in so many things. I'd kind of forgotten about him. I hadn't seen him in a while. I was like, oh yeah, you're amazing. So
What was his role in Race? I've forgotten.
he's the main guy with the alcohol business that Ray's trains under as a little boy.
Oh, okay.
It
So
starts like
almost like a
collecting bottles.
mentor.
Yeah. But then
Okay.
at some point he says, very much like in Bombay Velvet, he goes to him
Mm,
and says, I want to start my own business now. And they laugh at him. But
okay.
doesn't last long.
Right. um, I remember reading an interview of Nawazuddin Siddiqui's quite a while ago. I think this may have been around the time that Race was released.
Hmm.
And in that, he had talked about how Shah Rukh wanted to cast him as the police inspector. And Nawaz literally voiced a doubt that he had, where he basically was afraid that his scenes would be cut or his scenes would not be important enough, or he would basically,
Mm,
and I'm paraphrasing here, but he would basically just be like, a lackey, like a nobody,
sure.
because it's a Shah Rukh Khan movie, right?
Right.
He's the producer, he's the
That's
star,
pretty gutsy.
right? Like, what role is Nawaz going to get, right? And he didn't want to
That's
do it
gutsy.
if it just meant that he was going to be a nobody in this
Hmm.
movie. Like, he's just
Hmm.
there as like a foil. So he specifically talked about that, because he was like, I want to do it, but I want to make sure I actually have a good role and that I
Wow. Good for
matter.
him.
And Shah Rukh Khan apparently told Nawaz, like he literally said to Nawaz that you are actually the hero of this movie because you're the police officer who takes Raees down, who's a criminal. And I mean, in the end, of course, he is the victor, right? In the sense of he's the one left alive.
Yeah.
And he was like, I'm not going to take away your thunder, and I'm going to make sure that you get the importance that you deserve. And so in that context, when I watched that movie in the theater, because I didn't watch it the very first week it released, I read some of the interviews about it,
Mm.
etc., and then I watched it. And so I remember keeping an eye out for what were the Nawaz scenes going to look like, and was Shah Rukh going to keep his word and make sure that his, and I think he did keep his word. I
Mhm.
mean, Nawaz matters in this
Oh
movie.
yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And there's that one scene, especially, that I remember, even though it's been so long since I saw Race, because I haven't rewatched it since I
Sure.
saw it in the theater. There's that scene where, isn't there a scene where Shah Rukh brings like a dabba of mithai
Yeah.
and he gives
Well,
it to Nawaz
no,
at the,
he gives it to one of the other officers who is like, "Oh,
mm,
Raees had a baby,"
yeah.
and then Nawaz is like, "But this is my favorite, so I'll have one anyway."
Right. So that scene, especially, I remember like they had such, this feels weird to say, but they had such sizzling chemistry where like
I think
the
you're
eye
thinking of a different
contact.
scene because he's not in the Matai scene, but there's a
Oh,
scene where they're playing Karam. And Nawaz
okay.
is sitting down and he's like, put powder on it. And he's like getting all the pieces in. And he's like, here goes your bit. Here goes this business. Here goes that business.
Okay.
Here goes this other guy. There goes you, you know,
Right.
it's really good. Yeah. But they've got
Because
several encounters that are really
I
good.
just remember whenever they were together on screen, I remember
Hmm.
that even though Shah Rukh has such an outsized star presence, like he just
Hmm.
takes over the screen when he's on
Hmm.
there, I feel like Nawaz really held his own.
Hmm.
And I do think that the writing supported him. I mean, he is, of course, an extremely talented
Yeah.
actor, but
Yeah.
I do think that the writing supported him and the directorial choices supported him.
Hmm.
And I felt really happy for Nawaz because
Hmm.
I would not want to be in the position of being a Nawazuddin Siddiqui, being incredibly talented and then having a thankless little role where Shah Rukh just takes over. So I
Well, and
like that.
especially at that point, because he was, getting big at that point. So he
Yeah,
didn't I, I'm not an expert in his career. I've not read he
me
has not a
neither.
biography out, right? I believe. So I've
Does he?
never, I think
Okay.
so, or he was going to make one. Um, yeah, did he, I don't think that he needed this film to
Right.
create his own path or whatever, but I'm glad for him that he got it. And I think he is a really good foil. Just
Yeah.
like Irfan was good with Shah Rukh back in
Yeah.
Baloo. And so it's fun when he gets to go with some of these more actor kind of guys
Right.
because he responds to that, right? Like we know he was a stage actor and all this kind of thing, so
Yeah.
he can dial it back and respect different styles and things like that.
Yeah. So I'm surprised that you like Race so much and have
I
watched it so
know
many times because it's very
it's
violent.
very violent.
And knowing you, I was like,
I know
wait, you
it's
watched it so many times?
this is like how I like Ramsey Brothers horror because it's
Mm.
so kind of cartoony that it
But that
doesn't
is so outlandish and
scare me.
ridiculous.
Right. But this also is outlandish, right? Like there's
Right.
nothing to me that feels real about this,
Okay.
which might just show my naivete about certain kinds of violence and whatever. But this is not, yeah, this is extreme and therefore almost like removed because it's so
Okay.
fantastic in a way. Um, am I justifying this because I like Shah Rukh? Maybe, maybe. But yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna watch this every twice a year or anything like that. This is not a
Right.
comfort watch for me, but I was really
Right.
glad to revisit it. And I do think it's an interesting addition to his filmography.
Yeah, for sure. Also, no one pulls off a shalwar kurta like Shah Rukh does. So there's that. I love his
Mhm.
sartorial choices in this movie. I love his shalwar kurtas, especially in
Yeah.
the darker colors.
Yeah. All
The Patani
black.
salwars. I like that thing that Patani shalwars have, but I don't know what the actual word for it is.
Mm.
It's like a little button, like a little flap
Oh,
that they
hmm.
have up here on the kurta.
Hmm.
He looks really good in those. He has that like flashy watch of his. He
Yeah.
has his
Which
glasses.
which Atul Kulkarni's character gives him.
Ah,
And
okay.
when he's trying to go out on his own, he gives him the watch and says, "You've got 3 days to get the money together to buy out your role, basically." You're going to hear it ticking all the time. And then, of course, Raees gives him the watch back at some point. It's like tick, tick,
Nice.
tick. Yeah.
Right? I
Yeah.
love his hair. His hair is very different in this movie as well. Of course,
Hmm.
the eyeliner. So,
Hmm.
guys, Beth was making fun of me the other day. We were off camera and she was telling me that her choice was Raees. And I was like, oh my God, I love Raees because it has eyeliner Shahrukh, and eyeliner Shahrukh is my favorite Shahrukh. And she was like, no, I thought sad Shahrukh was your favorite. I was like, well, yes, emo, like tragic Shahrukh, who's dying of a heart attack in Kelowna, is also a favored Shahrukh of mine. But then I also like Heartbroken Shahrukh a lot, like in Kabhi
And
Haan Kabhi Na.
military uniform, I'm sure.
And yes, military uniform Shahrukh, where he's walking in slow motion in like an Air Force uniform and like the hat, and he's very like, hello. And I'm like, yes, you can court martial me.
All you have to do is say it's a favorite. And that means that you can have several favorites instead of like the favorite, my
Right. Like
favorite.
it's a
It's one of my
tier.
favorites. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
You're a
Like
favorite tier.
I learned something very interesting the other day. It was so, this is very tangential, but we wouldn't be the filmy ladies if
Mm,
we didn't go on tangents.
mm-mm.
I read a line the other day where it said, best friend is not a person, best friend is a tier.
That the first place I ever heard that is in Mindy Kaling's TV show. She says that.
Oh, okay. Well, so
Mhm.
that's what I
It's
mean.
true.
So best Shahrukh is not a Shahrukh, best
One.
Shahrukh
Yeah.
is a tier.
It's a tier.
There are
That's
many best
fine.
Shahrukhs.
That's fine. Yeah.
So of Shah Rukh's psychotic rankings, because we love psychotic Shah Rukh, who is most best psychotic Shah Rukh? How would you rank them? Because there's also Ahsoka, which is an intersection. We support
Yeah.
intersectionality of Shah Rukh. It's
Yeah.
eyeliner Shah Rukh as well as psychotic Shah Rukh.
Being an actual king kind of throws that one into a different he is psychotic. It's also part of the
Mhm.
job description in a way. And
Well, he
sort
doesn't
of,
have to be that psychotic, though,
yeah.
right? To be
And
a
then
king.
so is being like, is he just a smuggler or is he a gangster in Raees? I don't know what you would call him. I mean, he's
Gangster,
basically
I'd
he's a
say.
gangster, I think.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, no, okay. So my favorite unhinged is Basigar.
Okay.
I think like when we watched that last year, wow, I was so impressed with that film. So impressed. Like obviously I
Really?
had seen it, but like that film was perfect.
It's amazing. It is
Perfect.
so good.
Um, and this one is also very good. It just doesn't trip quite as many of my personal like favorite things or whatever. Um,
Mhm.
what are the other unhinged ones on Jam? Oh,
Dar.
dar. Yeah, I mean, all of these are
All of
important
the above.
entries into the canon of Shark
He's
types, but
kind of like he is an unhinged Shahrukh also in and like a small time gangstery person in Ram Jane,
mm-hmm,
which is a terrible
mm-hmm.
movie, co-starring
That's
Juhi
not my
Chawla.
favorite. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it has Atul Agnihotri in it. And my husband is obsessed with the title song. And you can't say Ram Jani around him because he breaks into that title song all the time. It is
Love it.
so bad. But yeah, so Ram Jani is also unhinged Shahrukh. Like, I almost feel like we need to compile a list of unhinged Shahrukhs, like sane Shahrukhs, like Dr. Jahangir Khan from Dear Zindagi
Very
Shahrukh.
sane. Yeah. Coach from Chuck Day is pretty
Oh,
sane.
I love him.
Hmm.
Yes.
He's wounded, but
Um,
he's sane.
Yes. I really enjoy Shah Rukh from Veer Zara, even though falling in love with a person for three that you have met for 3 days and then giving up your career and then spending jail for the rest of your
It's
life sounds very
unhinged in a different
unhinged.
way. Yeah. Not
Yeah.
violent, just a very bad decision. Um,
There is
oh, what
very
was I gonna
bad dad
say?
and horrible husband Shah Rukh from Kabhi Alvida Na Kehna.
Yeah.
That poor child. Imagine having a father like Shah Rukh
No.
in that movie.
I mean, Angel Weirdo from Kaho Naho is a little unhinged. But here we get to a truism, which is that your Hindi film hero often is unhinged,
Well, he is, yeah.
really. So
See, this is why you should watch Masaan because Masaan doesn't really have a hero. I guess
right.
Vicky Kaushal is a hero and Richard Chadda is also a hero in this movie. And neither of them is unhinged. And I swear to God, if you watch Masaan, you will fall in love with Vicky Kaushal like no other. I think part of the reason I adore that man so much is because my first introduction to him was Masaan.
Sure.
Because as he has become a bigger star, he's done all these films that I have absolutely zero interest in watching, such as Bad News. No, thank you. Do
Mm.
not want to watch. But Vicky Kaushal is one of those people that it's very hard for me to imagine him playing someone unhinged because he's so normal. And I don't say that in a bad way. It's nice to see someone who's that normal. Like he's so decent. He's so normal and Razi. He's such a sweetie in that movie. And then, Alia just like bamboozles him in that film. And then he's so hurt when he discovers what she's done. Have you seen Love Stories, the Kiara Advani and Vicky Kaushal bit
Yeah.
in that?
Mhm.
I think he's adorable in that as
Mhm.
well. Where on their wedding night, he's talking about like National Geographic and crocodiles and their mating habits. And I was like, I support this conversation. I do watch National Geographic and I do have a crocodile aficionado. And Karen Van is like, why is he talking about crocodiles and their mating habits? And I was like, why shouldn't he,
Because
girl?
he's a Roshan fan.
Yes. But yeah, you should watch Masaan because that is a very normal, very sweet, very endearing, just an absolutely darling
Mm.
babby Vicky Kaushal. And Richa
Mm.
Chadha is, you will fall in love with Richa Chadha like no other when you watch. I mean, she's, of course, amazing, but she's so good in Masaan as well. Pankaj Tripathi, I'm very curious to see what you think about him. He has a very brief role, but
Sure.
he's fine, I
Mm.
would say.
Mm.
What other movies strike you or characters strike you when you think of gray, either visually gray or morally
Yeah,
gray?
I mean, there's so many beautiful black and white films that have a lot
Mm,
of lovely grays in them. I know we will do the metallics separately, so I'm not talking
yes.
about silver here.
Mm,
Obviously, wardrobe-wise in particular, there are many amazing silver
yeah.
songs or and songs about the moon and moonlight and all
Yeah.
that kind of thing. Yeah, I if I were to do this again, I think I would choose something about aging
Okay.
or older people like. I mean, I have
That
not
Jennifer
heard.
Kendall movie that you picked.
Right, 36 Chowringhee Lane.
Right.
Like it's what's it called? 102 Not Out with Rishi and
I've
um
not seen it,
I
but
haven't
yeah.
seen it either, but there's a few of these kicking around. Or maybe something with um
There's a Nafisa Ali Dharmendra romantic
oh,
movie that I've never seen where they're older. And I think that I haven't seen it, but the concept is that I think they were lovers in college and then they got married to different people and parted their ways and then came back to Allah Kabhi Kabhi. And then they kind of come back together, but then they actually have an affair or romantic relationship or something. It wasn't like a very notable film or anything, but
mm.
there's that one as well.
There's a much beloved Bengali film from 2015, a family drama with Sumitra Chatterjee
Hmm.
is the grandpa, and he and the grandma, his wife, have like a it's a
Mm,
very turbulent thing, and their kids and their grandkids are around and whatever, but you get to see these senior people as full people, which is
mm,
amazing. So that would be, I found that movie a little mawkish, if I recall. So I'm not sure I would
mm.
choose that one exactly, but there's other things out there that are making a point of talking about
I
aging.
can't
Not a
talk
ton, but
about aging and graying without bringing up senior statesman Amitabh Bachchan in his Parampara Pratishtha Anushasan era, starting with
right.
Mohabbatein, where he's so insufferable.
You
But
know what
at
would
this
be
point,
interesting too is
yeah,
Kapoor and Sons for Rishi. Now, obviously when that came out, like people loved that movie, but I
I
don't
like that movie.
I've never rewatched it. I've never really thought much about it subsequently. Like, I'm not sure its impact would still feel great to me,
Mm.
but that would be an interesting one to rewatch, especially for
I
him,
haven't
for this.
rewatched it either. I just remember being blown away with how good Fawad Khan was in that movie. I mean, he's an
So good.
extremely
He's
talented
so
actor,
good.
but
Yeah.
he was so good in Kapoor and Sons. And I felt so bad for Siddharth Malhotra because in
I
every scene
know.
that they're together, you can see how mid he is. And I like Siddharth
I
Malhotra,
do
but I was
too.
like,
This
boy,
is not
I feel
it.
bad for you. Share screen space with Fawad because he eating you alive.
Yeah.
But that was a good movie. It's just not something that I necessarily want to rewatch.
No.
But Fawad in that movie was really good.
Yeah.
Um, I was thinking about when I was thinking about gray movies. I mean, I knew I wanted to talk about Masan because I
Yeah.
only ever need an excuse to talk about it. But when I think of the color gray, and especially when I think about sort of like a visual grayness, I always think of English movies,
Oh,
especially
sure. Yeah.
English movies and TV shows that are
Yeah.
based on classic literature. You
Yeah.
can't talk about Grey without thinking of
No.
Heathcliff and his moors from Wuthering Heights, or my favorite, The Hound of the Baskervilles, Sherlock Holmes.
Mm.
And again, there's those moors again,
Hmm.
or Daphne du Maurier's Rebecca, with all of the,
Oh, yeah, the fog. I
yes,
mean, we already
the
did our
fog,
Cora
and then
Rebecca episode, but
unfortunately the embers and the ashes, right?
yes, yes.
um and then of course also the Hindi version that we had talked about, Kohara, which
Mhm.
again has the fog in it. A
Fog
lot
would be
of
a
these,
great thing to talk about. Yeah.
yeah, there's a lot of these like movies that are set also in like hill stations, or that are based on like
Mist.
Ruskin Bond, that have
Yeah.
the mist and the
Yeah.
fog and everything.
You could do a
um
lot with gray.
Yeah, one of my favorite books, and I have never bothered to see any televised or cinematic version of it because I'm sure it would be disappointing, is I really love the book The Mists of Avalon.
Hmm.
It's based on the Arthurian legends
Mm.
and has like Morgan Le Fay and everything. And it talks about the mists that come in on schedule every day at a certain time and envelope the
Oh,
Isle
wow.
of Avalon, right? And when we had gone to England a few years ago, I specifically wanted to go to Glastonbury, the
Oh, yeah.
Glastonbury tour, because
Yep.
that was the inspiration for that part of Miss of Avalon. And so I remember it was a really beautiful, we'd gone in summer. And so it was a really beautiful, sunny, like English summer's day, by which I mean it was still on the cool and the chill side. But the sun was shining, the birds were twittering. It was really very idyllic, very pretty. And we started hiking because we wanted to hike up all the way to the tour. We go all the way up to the tour, and I'm like, this is pretty, this is nice, great views, etc., etc. And there's all these like new agey people around us because Glastonbury has basically become a very like new agey town. And we're all hanging out over there, and I'm like, okay, this doesn't feel particularly mystical to me, but whatever. And right on schedule, the mist started creeping in, and within seconds, like within minutes, the little gazebo like thing we were on the tour had become completely gray, and you could feel the moisture in the air, like you could feel the
Wow.
wetness and the
Mhm.
mist. And I was like, this is hella creepy, I don't know if I like this anymore. And if you looked even like 1 foot away, you couldn't see anything. It
Mm.
was nuts. And I was like, oh my God. So in the book, when they talk about it, she's not exaggerating, this is exactly how it is, which is why Glastonbury has been like kind of overtaken by all of these new agey types, right?
Yeah.
And then just like that, I think it took about a half an hour. By then the mist slowly subsided, and it was like nothing had happened, and it was back to like sunshine and birds. And it was
Wow.
seriously one of the coolest experiences of my life. It was
Wow.
really, really weird. But I really enjoyed that. And that happens a lot in San Francisco as well, where
Mm.
you'll go through the tunnel and then you'll get to SF, and it was like 70 degrees and beautiful, and now it's gray, and you can literally feel the mist and the fog on your skin. And we
Mhm.
call our fog Carl the Fog. He has a Twitter. He has, yeah, Karl, Carl the
Why is he
Fog.
named Carl?
I don't know, but you can follow him. He comes in every day, and then the sun blows him away, and then there's no more fog. But I always think of like gray as like the seaside and seagulls
Mhm.
and fog. It's like a very mystical color, isn't it?
Mhm.
Do you like gray more than black or less?
I have an increasing appreciation for gray
Hmm.
lately. I feel like it has a lot of use. It's useful.
How do you
Um,
mean?
well, sometimes you need a neutral, but black is too harsh, you know? The gray
Hmm.
can be really nice. Like a very dark gray, love it. Um, Gray is a little easier to keep clean than black. Like
Yeah.
not as stark, so things don't um show up against it as much. Dust is gray, at least where I live. So like that,
Right.
you know,
Yeah.
like I'm not a fan of this at least, in the US, I feel like so many houses are being built with like gray kitchens now. Like gray is the
Yeah.
that everyone's using right now. And I do not want a gray fake wood floor. I do not.
Right.
There is wood that tends towards the gray, right? And that's fine, but like vinyl planks that look like wood but they're gray, uh-uh. Um,
Yeah.
but And there's so many beautiful stones that are gray. So
Yeah.
it has this, it's a huge part of the natural world that I think we don't
Right.
tend to talk about a whole lot because it's not one extreme or the other. Uh,
Yeah.
and gray, I guess, at least around again around here, is like gray things are gray. It's not like there's so much foliage that turns to brown
Mm,
as the seasons change, but gray is just gray. It's
right.
not necessarily, I mean, I know I was saying earlier a sign of like aging, it's about change or fog and clouds coming in or shadow or whatever, but at least with plants, like it's not, so there's kind of a timelessness to gray as well. I think like
Hmm.
think about weathered stones and that kind of thing. So I don't know. Gray is a
There's there's a subreddit that I occasionally go and visit. I don't know why, but it's on brutalist architecture.
yeah.
And whenever I think of
Great.
brutalist architecture, it's all gray.
Yeah.
Like, especially when you see these pictures of like Eastern Europe,
Yeah.
or like like the USSR countries that
Yeah.
broke away and everything, or like Balkan architecture. And it's just like these gray slabs
I was about to
with
say
these
slab
tiny,
also.
yeah, they're just like these gray concrete slabs with these tiny, tiny little windows.
Uh-huh.
And the sky is gray and everything is gray, and I look at it and I'm like, good lord, I do not want to live there. Like, it's so scary. Have you seen this TV show? It's called The Americans. it
I know
has
I have not seen it, but I know.
it has Matthew Rhys
Yeah.
and I forget the
Harry
actress's name.
Russell.
Yes, Kerry Russell. And in The Americans, I won't spoil it for you, but it is primarily set in, obviously, in America, because they're the Americans. But the scenes that are in Russia, oh Lord. I was like, oh, wow, we're not in Kansas anymore. um it's all gray, and there's the supermarket. Especially, there's a scene where an American character is in a supermarket. Even the supermarket is all gray, and it has these horrible flickering gray lights.
Yeah.
And all the food she's looking at, which there's not very much of it, and there's no like options,
Right.
and all the food is gray. And I was just
Yeah.
like, and just the expression on her face, that actress is like, wow, this is not great. I am now in Russia. And I was like, oh god. But yeah, when I think of gray, I think of also all of this terrible, like, brutalist architecture.
Yeah.
And just, it's just this weird uniformity of everyone must look the same and be the same, and all the workers, all the proletariat must be in this area, and it's just kind of depressing.
It can be a very unsettling color for that reason too.
Right.
If someone's face is grayish, you're like they are unwell or they're very tired or
They
whatever.
are John Keats and they have TB.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It has so many interesting associations. When I just
Yeah.
think about how much I love that you picked something that pertains to ash. Like
Yeah.
I would never have come up with that, but that's very much a thing that gray embers and
I
ash, right? That's important.
Yeah, there's this thing I had read about. Again, this is a very Banaras thing that happens. So there's the festival Holi, right, where we play with like colors and stuff. And traditionally, it was Phoolon ki Holi. So you took flower petals and you threw
Mhm.
those. Then, of course, colors happen, and now it's all these terrible synthetic colors that are so bad for you and cause allergies and whatnot. But there is this thing which is called, I think it's called Bhuto ki Holi. So it's such an interesting story. So it's a story from scripture where the people were playing holy, and obviously it's living people, it's people like you and me, and they're playing holy. And the ghosts that live in the crematoriums and that live in places that haunt places are really sad. They're the bhoots, right, the bhutas. And they're sad because they want to play holy too, but there's no joy in their life and there's no happiness, so they're really sad about it. And so they appeal to Bhutnath, which is one of the names of Lord Shiva, because Lord Shiva is also the lord or the god of those who are dead, right? All the unsavory things,
Mhm.
essentially, he takes care of those. So they appeal to him and they're really sad. And he's like, I'll play holy with you. So he goes to the crematoriums and he goes to the places, the haunted places where the bhutas live, and he plays holy with them. But the only thing that they have that they can play holy with is ash. So
Mm.
it is their own ash. And he's like, that's okay. That's nothing to be scared of. And he plays holy with them. And that is why Lord Shiva has ash over himself and
Wow.
everything. And I just think that is so life affirming. This idea that just because you're dead doesn't mean game set matches all over. There is
Mhm.
still something that can, and like, not to have a fear of death, not to have a fear of dying, and that there can be joy even in that, and to not fear death as much. I think it's very, I personally find it very like oddly satisfying, because I'm like,
Mhm.
yeah, well, why shouldn't the ghosts play holy too? I think that's great. And yes, they can't play with flowers and color, and no one wants to play with them. But I like this idea of Lord Bhutnath going among them and playing, Bhutoki holy. It's such a cool, but
Yeah.
also creepy, but also cool visual,
Yeah.
right? So I like that.
Yeah.
Even ghosts deserve happiness, Beth.
They do. They do.
Okay, I think that concludes our episode. Unless you have some lasting, do you not have a gray cat?
I do have a gray cat. He's kind of gray with a little
Oh,
bit of brown, and he's a gray stripy tabby. I don't know where he is right now, so I cannot show it
so
right
cute. I wish he could have made an appearance on this episode. He could have been a
under the
filmy
table. He is. He's under the table. He's lying directly in front of the heating vent, like blocking all of it.
Oh, so cute. Well, you don't need to be warm, Beth. You have a kitty cat. You can just snuggle him, so that's fine. Just go lie next to him, next to the vent.
Lie on the floor, be like, "Hello, I would like something."
Hello, Mr. Watkins. All right, I think that concludes this episode, and we will see you guys next week. Tell us if you've seen Raees. Tell us if you've seen Masaan. What do you think of these movies? What do you think
All
of the
these
color
people have seen both
gray?
those films.
Yes, they've definitely seen Race for sure. And if they haven't, they should watch Race and Masan. You need to go watch Masan immediate. All right, we'll talk to you next week. Bye.